Hey kid, do you want more Morpho content? Cause if you do, you should subscribe to Lil Morpho now. Right now, go and subscribe. I play games on there, and here's a little clip to seduce you into subscribing. Hello? Hello? I do. Hi, hello, how are you? I hope you guys are doing good. I'm doing good. Shocker. So I feel like we should, as a collective, ruin our happiness and talk about today's book. Zola by D.E. McCluskey is an extreme horror book I almost liked but ended up hating instead. It was my first real disappointment with this subgenre. I felt like we had something special between us. Mr. McCluskey, what happened? Why did you do this to me? Huh? I'm never trusting anyone ever again because of you. I'm done. The first thing the book does is introduce us to the sad world of Andrea Zola. The misery in her life, like millions of other women, is caused by her husband. When they first met, he was sugar, spice, and everything nice. But as things progressed between them, spice was the only thing left in him, and it burned Andrea every time he touched her. He showed his true colors when he made sure Andrea had no one in her life who could rip her out of his clutches. He ridiculed her, beat her, and sexually assaulted her, and every time blamed it on his bad mood and alcohol. Every time it was a mistake. He would never do it again. Come on, Andrea. You know me. You know it was a mistake. I would never do anything to hurt you on purpose. At one point, Andrea stopped loving Anthony, but she never stopped loving cheese. It was one of Andrea's favorite things in life. She soon found herself in a cycle of eating cheese because she's unhappy with her life, then becoming unhappy about gaining weight, and then eating even more cheese, which would lead her to gaining even more weight and becoming even more unhappy and eating even more cheese. She gained even more weight when she became pregnant, and Anthony became even more cruel. You're gonna end up looking like a tub of lard, he would sneer. I ain't putting my dick into a bucket of grease. After a long time of constant and rough abuse, Anthony gave up on Andrea and started fooling around with other women. She couldn't even convince herself to be sad that her husband was in bed with other women because she was happy she didn't have to endure his dingus any longer. It is so odd to me when authors use other words for penis when the content isn't funny. Like I do too, so maybe that's hypocritical, but I think I get a pass since my videos are not that serious and I only say pee-pee when the pee-pee gets chopped off and they deserve it. I don't know, I feel like authors should take themselves and their works a little more seriously than a girl who makes shitpost book reviews. Like maybe you shouldn't say putting his dingus in her grease bucket when describing spousal rape. When Andrea was in labor, Anthony played the role of caring husband, but it only lasted until the baby was born. Their son came with infant jaundice, yellow discoloration of a newborn baby's skin and eyes. The skin condition, along with being wrapped in a yellow blanket, made only one name pop into Anthony Zola's head. Gordon. Gordon Zola. You know, like the cheese Gorgonzola? Andrea was convinced he did this to mock her cheese addiction and to make her feel awful about ruining their son's life. However, Anthony always defended that this was to build character and make Gordon tougher. Andrea was so embarrassed that she didn't even invite her family and friends to the christening of the boy, and one by one they left her due to her coldness towards them. The only people she had left was her shitty husband and her beautiful son she loved more than anyone in the world. When she couldn't shed the pregnancy weight though, the verbal abuse got so much worse to the point of Andrea feeling so ugly that she would barely leave the house. Her days consisted of taking care of Gordon, being abused by Anthony, and then using cheese and gin to soothe her pain. This is how she survived her 7 years of marriage.
I missed a portion of the audio. BCM stupid, but what I said was, up until Gordon turned 7, Anthony was absent from his life, and then he became the apple of Daddy's eye.
At first, Andrea didn't like this sudden affection, but Gordon would come home with the biggest smile every time his dad took him out to a bar he frequented with his friends. Gordon would explain how they're all so nice to him, they give him sweets, and that there are other kids there and he plays with them. Seeing his excitement and glowing eyes was enough for Andrea to silence her worries, but the extra money Anthony would bring home also helped. She never really received any money from him that didn't go to essentials for the house until then. When she asked Anthony what the money was for, he just shrugged and said it's hers. This was great for Andrea because she could save this money to escape from the torture one day, and Gordon was happy too. Little boy was so proud to say Anthony was his dad, so she wanted him to be proud to call Andrea his mom too. She decided to lose weight, take better care of herself. So she dumped her gin in the sink and threw her cheese in the trash and went and bought new clothes for herself and her son. She thought maybe everything would change for the better now. Unfortunately though, things didn't work out quite like that. Everything would change, but not for the better. One day Anthony brought little Gordon home with a black eye and a bloody nose. When she asked what happened to their son, he just shrugged and said, it's nothing he won't shake off. He just had an altercation with one of the other boys, that's all, nothing more. The boy's stuff. He'll get over it." Then he demanded Gordon goes to his room and let Mommy and Daddy talk through some things. After he was gone, Anthony threw $700 at Andrea's face and told her there's more where that's coming from. That was the kind of money Andrea had never seen all at once. But of course, she had to earn it. Although she protested saying she should be with Gordon instead, Anthony wasn't the kind of man you could just deny. The only good thing about him was that he was a fast finisher and didn't care for a woman's pleasure. As Andrea was making her way to Gordon's room, she could already hear his little cries. When she went over to him, she saw that the bedsheets and his pajamas were covered in blood and feces. She couldn't really make sense of what she was seeing at first, but she could tell he was in a lot of pain. She could also see in his face that it was a pain she herself was also familiar with. Cleaning her son was Andrea's first priority. She discovered that the blood was coming from Gordon's bottom. As a mother who had to stand strong next to her son in a time like that, she pushed her tears away, but couldn't keep herself from crying when Gordon told her that it was his dad and his friends who did this to him. The little boy eventually fell asleep and Andrea left the room, closing the door behind her as to shield him from what she was about to do. Her insides were churning. They were a turmoil of undulating molten lava. Externally, she had the appearance of being cool, calm, even. Her hands were not shaking. She couldn't even feel the elevated beating of her heart. There was no throb in her head, no sheen of sweat on her body, and the tingling of her fingers had receded. She smiled as she thought about two cartoon versions of herself sitting on her shoulders. One was a devil, dressed in red, complete with horns and a pitchfork. The other was an angel, dressed in white, with a halo and a harp. And both were agreeing with Andrea. Before she entered the bedroom she and Anthony shared, she went down to the kitchen to get 2 items that she needed. No, not needed. Wanted. Andrea didn't need to do this. She wanted to do this. She found Anthony fast asleep, snoring like a pig. She got on the bed with him. She set the 2 items next to his body and started whispering to him in a voice she was sure would work to wake him up. She wanted him to be conscious for this. The seductive whispering and the massaging of his stinky balls woke him up. She lifted his foreskin and saw that it was loaded as usual. Anthony had never been the one for hygiene. The smell of smegma hit her nostrils. At least she loves cheese. She started sucking him and this fully woke him up. Right as he was about to get his release, she used the bread knife with a serrated edge to slice his pee-pee down the middle. His legs were twitching and thrashing. Enjoying the view, Andrea decided to use the second item she brought from the kitchen, a large chunk of soft cheese. She stuck it down into his limited edition banana split. She was proud of what she's created, but she wanted him to taste it. So she removed half of the smelly dessert she prepared with such hard work and shoved it down her husband's throat. Anthony Zola stuck his penis inside holes he had no business being in, and he died in his bed with cheese stuck inside his holes cheese has no business being in. Then she stuffed her dead husband into the closet and closed the doors. The smell was hard to ignore. She didn't know how to get rid of a body, but she would figure it out soon. The money Andrea had saved combined with Anthony's stash around the house would only cover their rent for a year or 2. Any other essentials like food or clothes for a growing boy would be hard to get. She didn't have any plans, but she would figure it out soon. While she was in her own head, Gordon woke up. She made grilled cheese for her hungry son. It seemed as though the smell of cheese covered the strong stench of death looming around the house. The smell made her hungry. But it wasn't exactly just the cheese that made her mouth water, but something else with it. She remembered how delicious Anthony smelled, covered in cheese. The meat covered in even smellier cheese. It made sense. I mean, this would solve multiple problems at once. They could just eat the asshole, thus getting rid of a dead body and their hunger. Listen, if carpet munchers can have a flag, so should human munchers. Am I right? Happy Pride. I know this was a lot, but just bear with me, okay? Keep up, keep up. With this revelation, they kind of start eating him. Of course, Gordon has no idea he's eating his dad. He thinks he's just eating chicken, and his dad left them. But in reality, his mom went into the bedroom one night and cut his dad into pieces and froze the chunks of meat in the freezer to take out regularly whenever they needed to eat. This didn't bother me that much. I mean, I don't condone eating people. It's not something I enjoy doing. I've never done it before. I've never done it, but I'm never gonna do it, but I can handle it in media. Yes, the descriptions of flavors and smells are really nasty in this book, but I watched all 3 seasons of Hannibal while going all Bugs Bunny on an ungodly amount of carrots for some reason back in high school, so this was easy work for me. But there's a detail here that really just got my ass, just really got me, was her boiling his bones to make gravy. She boiled his bones to make gravy, and then they poured the gravy every time they would eat the meat and cheese. That made me have a reaction even now. Also, the whole blue cheese situation didn't help either. I can't handle stinky cheese. I'm weak, but strong enough to admit it. So all of this combined, this book has a very strong stench to it, and it literally radiates off of it, and I want to rip my nose off of my face. Now, the body of Anthony was gone, and their hunger was satiated for a while, but they were running out of meat. Andrea decided to take Gordon to a diner. While there, they ran into Anthony's friends. They asked about Tony's whereabouts, made lewd comments towards Andrea, and even told Gordon that they miss him. They did this all with the stupidest smile on their punchable faces. As mother and son were walking back home, Andrea got a second idea. Her hunger might just save them once again. So, a second revelation, right? She goes to this bar Anthony used to frequent at, and picks up his friends one by one, robs them, kills them, and they both eat them. And she does this over and over again, which is the most unrealistic thing about this book. Eating humans, lots of people are into that, believe it or not, and I'm aware that cops could be really incompetent when it comes to solving crimes, but fuck you, dude. She's picking up men from the same circle and killing them, and no one in their family, friends, co-workers, or even people who work at the bar or other people who go there often don't question where the hell these men are at? That's so stupid. I just don't get why we can't have an extreme horror book that makes sense. You can make it batshit crazy and avoid laws, but not in this situation, not in a town or a city like this one. I recently talked about fluids, and even though a lot of that book didn't make sense and was void of logic, I thought it was pretty smart with its use of a casino. Because when an establishment like that finds bodies in their rooms, they can't alert the police since they have maybe hundreds, maybe thousands buried under the facility, so it makes sense. I don't know. I can't be the only one who gets stuck up on details like this. I refuse to be the only buzzkill in the room. As the years passed, Gordon grew to be a well-balanced, handsome, well-adjusted young man. During his teenage years, he made the conscious decision to forego hanging out in the malls and chasing girls on his bike with his friends. He decided not to join the softball team in school or the football team. He never went to the prom either. He had decided he wanted to be a good son and stay home and keep his mother company. All of this was in Andrea's head, of course. Gordon was an unbalanced, overweight, maladjusted man-child. Due to his inactivity, he gained an inordinate amount of weight. He had never had his hair cut, he never shaved, and very seldom bathed. He hadn't done any of the school activities because he never went to school and never had any friends to do them with anyway. He had fallen through the cracks of society and had never been missed. Andrea had tried to homeschool him. She wanted to keep him away from corruptive external influences that might turn a boy's head, especially one with such as gentle a soul as he had. She fed him, clothed him, and looked after his every whim. It had only ever been the two of them. Just them. So the book is split into 2 parts, just like Anthony's PP. The main character in part 1 is Andrea, and the main character in part 2 is Gordon. The first part was a decent part. It didn't have incredible prose or even logic, like I said, but eating assholes is an activity I can get behind. Stop that. The second part makes you feel like you're reading the work of a different author altogether. It's full of typos and editing mistakes. There's an insane amount of repetition here. It is so boring. But the worst of all, any respect the author previously showed to his characters are long gone. He doesn't want to protect them anymore. They're just like used tissues you leave in your pocket and they get all broken apart during the wash and you don't even know what kind of boogers you lost to the machine. I think he either lost passion for his book midway or just rushed it for a deadline or maybe just wanted to finish it, but either way, this was a grave mistake on his part. He became one of those checklist writers, it could be that he thought the book wasn't as extreme enough. Dude, I wish a lot of extreme horror authors didn't think they have to fit into a certain box, then maybe they might produce some actual work of art. Now, I'm not gonna go into too much detail here since the days just repeat themselves anyway, it would be so boring to you, but I will explain you the disgusting stuff Gordon does, obviously. You can't escape from that. So he's 27 now, already disgusting. I'm kidding, 27 is actually a really hot age. Or so I've heard. Andrea finds a new man whenever the need arises. Over the years with no other woman in his life, Gordon, grows an affection towards his mom. He often watches Andrea when she's taking a bath or seducing her gentleman callers. That's what they call the men that they consume. He doesn't really see the killing part though, so he's pretty much still clueless how his mom gets the meat. He just knows mom brings man home, then we have meat. He also gets jealous of these men, and the men are just like scared of him. He diddles himself so many times, way too many times. In this book, way too many times, and sometimes he eats it and sometimes he saves it in a jar. I'd be surprised, but I have seen what the Pony Come Jar project is and nothing surprises me anymore. Bro, someone even did it with a Jeffrey Epstein figurine. I was like, hell yeah, that's what he deserves, the asshole, but then realized that's probably a teenager who did that, and that's exactly what Epstein would have wanted. That made me sad. As the time passes, the meat Andrea cooks for the 2 of them becomes tougher to chew. This is because she gets old as the man she brings home, and when we get old, our meat isn't as juicy and tender anymore. You gotta eat them young. Honestly, the hatred for DILFs in this book is astounding. Twinks everywhere are rioting. They're saying during Pride Month? How dare you? Happy Pride. Then one day, Andrea dies in her sleep for some reason. Now I will be listing the things he does. Thank me for saving you from the skin-crawling descriptions. You're welcome. Number 1. He doesn't understand his mom is dead, so he touches his thingus to his dead mom. Thingus. The author's fixation on the word dingus and its variations should be studied and brought to court as evidence against him. Number 2. He looks at his mom's nips and gets confused. Because they're purple now, and he's seen them before. They're supposed to be pink, so what's up with that? Number 3, this part is messed up and a little confusing. He has a nightmare. In it, he's a child, and he's in a blurry state, being passed around to men, and they're, orally assaulting him. Then one of the men transforms into his mom. Then he sees his dad. At the end, old release on his face, and he says it tastes like his mom's gravy and cheese sauce. When he wakes up from the nightmare, he jacks off and eats his Gordon cakes. That's what he calls them. The author named every strange substance in the book after food. Please don't mention it in the comments. Number 4, he tries to eat the head he finds in the fridge, but the taste is sour, so he drops it on the floor and it explodes. Then he grabs some gorgonzola cheese and a spoon and goes digging in there, on the floor. Number 5, he assaults his dead mother in many different ways that you don't want to know about. Number 6, he eats his mother, cooked and uncooked. And then finally, he dies due to an infection caused by a cut he made on his hand accidentally as he was cutting her up. The end. So, yeah, good fucking riddance, I say. This book takes abused becomes the abuser trope to a whole new level. It is so frustrating and disgusting to me. It's a real thing, yes, but artists rarely do it justice, despite it being heavily overused in media. How about the abused kid grows up to be a nice fucking person for once? For a change. I'm begging you. That also happens. That's also real. It happens more often. Where's the representation? Where's the diversity? Like, I just feel so bad for Andrea, so incredibly bad for her, but at the same time, how could she just let her son become that? You know, cool, you don't want to lose him to the cruelty of the world, but holy shit, woman, why didn't you teach him not to eat his own jizz? All that protein from munching on humans for 20 years, where are the brain cells? Where are they? Like, you couldn't have possibly just spent your lives eating either. You know, what else did you do during those 20 years? This is why I strongly despise time jumps in books, because they're so lazy. They just don't hit the same as a time warp. This book also reminded me of The Slob and Son of the Slob a lot. Somehow it was even worse than them, so congratulations to Mr. McCluskey, you have accomplished something. Honestly though, this could be totally read as a prequel to The Slob, and it would certainly fit the incompetent and naive mother narrative. Dude, I'm so done with this video. I'm so tired. Put this book in a dumpster, yeah? And the dumpster would rush into upcoming traffic. Put this book in the middle of New York City, and the entire rat population would move out. Show this book to Remy, he would drown himself in a pot.
Disgusting!